Hello, everyone. Just a quick heads up. We've got some great bonus content available this month on What a Hell of a Way to Die. And if you sign up at the $5 tier, you get access to everything we have put out bonus content-wise since we started the show in 2016. The link is in the show notes. And otherwise, please enjoy this episode.
Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. Glory, glory, what a hell of a way to die. He ain't gonna jump no more.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of What a Hell of a Way to Die. It's me, Francis, and it's him, Nate. Nate, how are you? How are you doing this evening? Or this? I still haven't figured out exactly time zones. It's afternoonish.
It's afternoon. Yeah, it's about a little after 2 p.m. here in the lovely city of London. I'm in the studio. It's sunny, but it was dumping rain this morning. The sun's going to set in like 3 hours. I think we're almost at the point where the sun is setting after 5 p.m. If not now, then in like a couple of days we'll be there. So all good. I mean, it sucks, but you know, it's better than December where the sun was setting before 4 p.m. And as you know, as our listeners know, This particularly drives me out of my fucking mind and makes that part of winter, like that's the time of year when I just start fantasizing about, you know, dropping everything and moving to Los Angeles because it's just, or like fucking Sydney, Australia, just because it's just like, oh, I want sun. I hate this shit.
Dude, that's why like for the longest time, every winter, escape to Florida for a week just to be like, I just need to not look like even it's, you know, right now it's sunny outside, but it's still cold and it's going to be a high of 12 degrees over the weekend. And that makes me want to die. Like literally,
I've forgotten about that kind of temperature.
Right.
Because it doesn't get that cold this far south in England. It really doesn't. Like in the time that I have lived here, which at the end of this month will be exactly 2.5 years, I think if the coldest I've seen it get is maybe 28 or 27 Fahrenheit, like -2 or -3 centigrade. I have never seen it get colder than that. Yeah. Like I've definitely never seen it get into like the teens or the single digits ever.
The Midwest always like kind of tricks you a little bit because like you'll get through October, November, December, get kind of through January and just like, yeah, we had some cold days. Maybe we had a little bit of snow, but it hasn't been like, you know,
winter's almost over.
Right, it's almost over. We got the shortest month, and then it's March, and it's spring, and like February is always just like a boot to the neck when it comes to like, no, all that winter weather, we're saving it up for now. It's going to be 12 degrees, which wouldn't be that big of an issue if I didn't have to walk a dog 3 times a day. We don't have a yard, like a fenced yard to just shove this Pyrenees, who would just absolutely love, you know, cold-ass winter. She was, every time the snow comes through, she starts like freaking out because she wants to dig her snow hole. I don't know if your parents' Pyrenees do that, where like it's winter, it's time to dig like a small depression for me to hang out in when it's snowy. So she hasn't been able to do that this year.
I don't know if my parents, because my parents' dogs are just completely outdoor dogs. I mean, they have like a hutch for them that they can sleep in, but I mean, they take care of the sheep and stuff, so they sleep in the barn when it's really cold. When the sheep have to go in the barn too. But I was just thinking about this. Maybe I've told this story before on the podcast. Like, you know, 4 years in, I lose track of which dad stories I've told. But in the olden days, in a land far removed from the present, 2004 in Bloomington, Indiana, I remember the same phenomenon you were describing. Because my freshman year, Indiana had a rule. IU had a rule that like, unless you were local to Bloomington, you weren't allowed to have a car as a freshman. Or rather, you could have a car, but the only place on campus you could park it was the stadium lot, which was pretty far removed from the main part of campus. And you had to pay like a pretty significant chunk of money to store your car there. So most people who are from Indiana or from elsewhere in America just didn't have cars. So I lived on campus in a dorm and I had to walk, to class here and there. It wasn't far. I mean, like probably a mile at most for like my absolute most far-flung class. You know, coming from the suburbs, it felt like a long distance, but then like, you know, after you live in a big city, you realize it's really not that far.
Right.
But you know, probably like a mile-ish, maybe half mile to a mile. But I remember the week before Valentine's Day, so this week-ish, more or less, it was one day I had a class, I want to say at 10 in the morning, I had 10:10 I had to be at, and it was a low of -15 and a high of -5. And I just walked out in that, just fucking, just dressed as warm as I could. If I remember correctly, I had like leather. I think I may have worn my combat boots because we were doing BDUs in ROTC back then.
Mm-hmm.
Like that was what we got issued. And so I had my BDU boots, and I'm pretty sure I wore my black BDU boots with like really warm socks and like jeans because it was so fucking cold. And yeah, I don't miss any of that. I mean, like, it got that cold periodically in New York, but most of the time it wasn't. Most of the time it was like the lows were in the single digits or in the teens, but because it's a coastal city and you get all the wind and shit and the big buildings and stuff, like you just get blasted in the face with wind with that temperature, and it just fucking sucked. It was awful. And then obviously, like, all true New Yorkers know how beautiful the snow looks when it first comes down, and then within like 2 days there's just piled up trash and like, frozen dog piss everywhere. And so like the beautiful snow gets turned into like this disgusting slush very, very quickly. So yeah, we had snow. It stuck for like 5 hours. That's the one time it stuck since I've been here. Don't really miss it that much. I mean, maybe a little bit of snow here and there, but yeah, I definitely don't miss 12 degrees Fahrenheit, which I got in fucking Georgia sometimes. It got that cold.
My daughter's been upset that we haven't had any good snow. Like, we had a little smattering of snow, but nothing, not like the New England where they got a good like couple of inches of snow. Like we get that in St. Louis sometimes, but not every year. So with luck, maybe at least with this cold weather, we'll get something that'll entertain her and she can go outside, because it's starting to realize that like we're kind of getting agoraphobic because we just don't leave the house, and now it's just like, well, why? And then when it is, it's like you have to dislodge yourself to go somewhere. It's just like, I don't want to. Like, I'm so comfortable here in my house. It's warm. Like, come spring and summer, I'm gonna want to get out and at least go running again. But damn, man, this winter it's just been a tough winter, I'm sure, for everybody.
Yeah, man. I mean, on Monday, I went out and ran a bunch of errands and bought like groceries to make this. I wanted to make this Chinese beef noodle soup, and there were certain things I just couldn't find in the grocery store, so I had to go to some of like the smaller markets and stuff near where we live. And dude, it's just like retail apocalypse. Like, everything that's not food is fucking shut down. Like, even the vape shop, which is like a mainstay of fucking Main Street England, what they call the High Street, it's been shut down. And it was wild being out. I mean, I realized that it was the longest I'd been out like running errands probably since the initial part of the lockdown, where like you couldn't get any delivery stuff. It was all booked up. And so it's weird. I mean, like I'm trying to make myself get out and do stuff. I definitely need to get out and fucking really attack the garden and get rid of all these fucking weeds and get everything prepped. But like, man, you're right. It's been a hard winter, and it's just, it makes you want to fucking curl up in a ball and drink antifreeze.
Well, you know what? There's no reason why you can't do that. Just like soldiers out of Fort Bliss. Now, Nate, have you ever been to Fort Bliss?
No, I've been to El Paso, but not to Fort Bliss.
Fort Bliss, I spent 2 weeks on Fort Bliss. It was two of the most ridiculous and insane 2 weeks that was only really made better by the fact that like I was down there with a unit I didn't know, but I had an ex-girlfriend that was stationed there, and she and I were on good terms, so I at least had somebody, like, she would come pick me up in the car and we'd go out to dinner or something. Like, I wasn't stuck, because where we were these the big Quonset, like half shell Quonset huts, but not like these massive, like these gigantic fucking Quonset huts, like insanely huge, that they crammed a bunch of bunk beds into, and just the lights were on all the time, and that's where we slept. Couldn't tell you what my mission was down there. Don't remember anything about it other than being absolutely pissed off the entire time, but also finding really good sushi. So 6 one, half dozen of the other, I guess. But
yeah, I mean, I've had I remember I went to El Paso as a kid, so I didn't go to Fort Bliss. My dad was stationed in New Mexico, but not on an active duty post. He was actually the IG for the New Mexico National Guard as a lieutenant colonel. And so we lived in New Mexico, but we lived the place where he worked out of was like this guard annex just south of Santa Fe. So we just lived there, and like it was a completely different experience. I've heard a lot of people say Bliss is not a bad place to be stationed compared to Hood, obviously, which sucks, and everyone knows Hood sucks. I've heard people say, as an adult, that El Paso's not that bad. It's like a weird, kind of cool town. I mean, I've had some friends who've been there who've been like, it fucking sucked, but I've also had friends who have liked it. However, I have not had anyone who either personally or their soldiers got hospitalized for drinking antifreeze in the field, which just happened this week, or last week rather, at Fort Bliss.
Yeah, 3rd Battalion, 43rd Air Defense Artillery, which Fort Bliss is going to be where a lot of the ADA is, because I don't know if it's the biggest base in the United States, but it is like one of the few places that you can shoot Patriot missiles. Like, you can shoot the big land-based shit because it's just so out in the middle of nowhere and there's just nothing around.
Yeah.
So Bliss is huge, and that's where you're going to find your ADA soldiers, who, God bless them, like, I can't imagine, when I was joining the Army in, the early, in 2000, the year 2000, Air Defense Artillery seemed like it might be a good something to get into. In Afghanistan in 2004, they were all infantry, just like everybody was. Either you were infantry or you were some sort of specialized thing, because apparently we didn't have enough combat soldiers. So shout out to the ADA for being incredibly bored and needing something to do. So,
weirdly, ADA counts as a combat arms branch. They are the shoot missiles at missiles branch, but they count as combat arms. So you have infantry, armor, now lumped together as maneuver, artillery, and air defense. Weirdly enough.
I mean, they're all shooting at stuff. So why shouldn't they be able to man a 50 cal on a convoy? I guess. I mean, Joe was a tanker. And
I mean, they're supposed to man Avengers, which are basically the same thing, right? I mean, with shooting missiles at stuff and supposed to 50 cal. So I reckon, like, surely they must do qualification with the other weapons on their vehicles that aren't air defense weapons. So yeah, why not?
Yeah. So 11 soldiers with the ADA got hospitalized for drinking antifreeze.
For drinking antifreeze. I want to just read a couple paragraphs of this story, because I feel like it's better if you get it in the very sort of diplomatic, clinical tone of a military.com article. All right. Army investigators are trying to find out how the, quote, liquor, unquote, that 11 hospitalized Fort Bliss, Texas soldiers confessed to drinking during a recent field exercise ended up containing a deadly ingredient used in antifreeze. 9 of the soldiers have been released from the William Beaumont Army Medical Center in El Paso, Texas, but 2 still remain in stable condition in the intensive care unit. Lieutenant Colonel Allie Payne, a spokeswoman for 1st Armored Division, told military.com on Monday. The soldiers, quote, have an improved prognosis, but they remain in the ICU, unquote, Payne said. Laboratory tests showed that the soldiers, who were from the 3rd Battalion, 43rd Air Defense Artillery Regiment, had trace elements of ethylene glycol in their blood, Payne said. Ethylene glycol is a colorless, odorless, sweet-tasting chemical used in antifreeze and other automotive products. Quote, early ethylene glycol intoxication resembles ethanol intoxication, but without the characteristic odor of alcohol in the patient or victim's breath, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention's website. Consuming as little as 4 ounces of ethylene glycol can be enough to kill an average-sized person. Many of the hospitalized soldiers admitted to investigators they thought they were drinking alcohol, not antifreeze. Quote, when they realized that they were in a life and death situation and that it was very serious, a lot of people came forward with the truth. They came forward with who was involved and what they believed they drank, Payne said. They thought they were drinking liquor. But so far, investigators have not figured out who brought the soldiers the substance that they thought was liquor and how it contained the poisonous ingredient. The truth is, we don't know how what they were consuming was mixed with the ethylene glycol, Payne said, adding that it is a possibility that someone brought liquor to the field in an antifreeze container. Now that, to me, is the most plausible explanation.
I was going to say,
like, yo, dude, I brought fucking vodka in an antifreeze container, and then you drink the wrong one.
Or you drink, or like you just didn't wash it out. Like there's no,
good
there's
point.
no. It's a very viscous. It's like oil, like oil. The bottles that oil come in, those things, like you never empty it out. You can't wash it out. It's oil. It's like going to be attached to whatever's in there. But I can't believe like anybody would, like, Nate, I've snuck booze into a lot of places. There's multiple ways of doing it. There's like we've been at war for 20 years. How have these soldiers not at least come across one person who knows how to smuggle alcohol into a place where alcohol is not allowed? You certainly don't put it in antifreeze. You just get vodka and you put it in a water bottle, or you get Listerine with a little bit like, oh, my bringing my big bottle of Listerine to the field because I love to have a fresh breath while I'm out there. And then like you never see that guy using Listerine.
Yeah, I mean, you can legitimately just take Listerine, take a Listerine bottle, clean it out, put vodka or whatever you want to put in it, and put a single drop of blue dye, and you'll be fine.
Yeah.
Like, you can buy blue dye off fucking Amazon. It's not hard.
Yeah.
Like,
little
bring
food coloring.
two small bottles if you don't want to fucking let people in on, you don't want people to know, because obviously it'd be a little bit weird if you show up holding like a fucking water buffalo full of Listerine for the formation before you go to the field. But you know what I mean? Like something small. Now, I never drank in the field. I never drank on deployment. I was a nerd. I was a fucking Boy Scout. I didn't smoke weed on deployment. I got offered hash all the time. There was a weed plant growing outside one of my windows. Like, I wanted to smoke weed like nobody's business. I wanted to fucking go down to the bazaar and buy fucking Valium and just get lifted. You have no idea how much I wanted to do that, but I didn't because I was a nerd and I was a Boy Scout. That being said, if you want to drink alcohol in the field, like, there are ways to be smart about it. You do not have to drink antifreeze. You are not yet in a fucking Siberian gulag, antifreeze and other fucking petroleum oils and lubricants are not your only sweet release.
And I've made alcohol before. I've talked about it quite often, and we experimented with it, but we never poisoned ourselves with it. But also, we kind of knew what we were doing. You can read like how to make wine and the basic things that you need to make booze in any kind of situation. But like, I just like, Nate, it kills me that these, like, first off, the idea that they would put it into an antifreeze bottle, very possible. There's also a very real possibility that somebody was just like, hey man, I mix this booze with antifreeze and it's going to get us even more fucked up while we're out here. And 11 soldiers, 1 warrant officer, 2 non-commissioned officers, and 8 enlisted, so 8 junior enlisted, all decided this is a good fucking idea. A warrant officer, Nate, was involved in this. That's, I think, another important part of this story, is like, if it was just some dipshit sergeants and E4s and belows, whatever, but somehow, like, who do you think brought it? Do you think it was the warrant officer? Like a mechanical warrant officer? Like, are warrant officers mechanics? Do we have mechanic warrant officers?
Yeah, for sure. You have maintenance, like battalion maintenance officers, and especially for a unit like that, like that's way more. I mean, because in a light unit, your BMO is typically an officer. Your brigade maintenance officer would be a warrant. But like when you get into heavier shit, like when I was in Korea and we had tanks and Bradleys, you had way more warrants. You had warrants in battalion doing maintenance, and then you had like senior like chief warrant 3s and 4s doing maintenance at brigade level. So yeah, like absolutely you would have a maintenance warrant who would have access to stuff, like, but that would be hilarious if Big Chief was the guy who got everybody fucked up on ethanol or ethylene glycol. Well, I would hope. I'm not surprised that there were no officers involved, because I mean, the let's get fucked up on petroleum oils and lubricants thing does not really seem like an opportunity to invite officers to like be of the fraternity of soldiers. You know what I mean? Like, this absolutely seems like a Joe thing. Like, this is an enlisted and warrant ranks only. All right, this is what happens. This is not the all ranks club. This is not the officers club. You are not invited. Joe's, warrants, and NCOs only.
When we were pouring off our the wine that we made in Iraq, we always made sure to deliver a bottle to the room that had our 2 lieutenants in it, and a bottle to the major. And when our XO found out about it, like, he lived somewhere, he found himself a place so he didn't have to live around us, and he also had it set up like with cable drops and internet and everything. Like, I was in his room once, and it was insane. It was like this beautiful, like it wasn't disgusting, but it was like this like little hug that he had created inside of a bee hut. So it was great. And then like after the deployment, I was like offhandedly mentioned about how we made all this booze, and he's just like, wait a minute, I never got any of that. And I said, you didn't live with us, sir. I didn't have to pay you off. So it's on you. But that's what you do. You got to pay off the officers to look away. But I guess this is like we're just out here for 2 weeks and we want to spend a night having a drink. I get it. I've done it. Like, certainly on annual trainings, I have snuck off because, they tell you no drinking on training missions like this, because they know that soldiers in general, like soldiers, the body of soldiers, are stupid as shit. And they will get drunk and stay up until 3 o'clock in the morning, and then just, make mistakes the next day because soldiers.
Yeah, it's like, hell yeah, we got fucking hammered on spice and fucking Listerine. Let's go do maintenance on a fucking half track or something like that. I got 2 hours of sleep, and now it's time for me to take the engine block out of a Bradley. It's like, whoops, broke my hands and my legs and my spine.
And I gotta admit, I understand it because every time that I put a uniform on, like it was like my brain kind of went to the id part of my psyche, where it's just like I'm either hungry, I'm tired, or I want to fuck, and that's it. Those are the three things I want to do in uniform, or get absolutely trashed. So I understand there's a reason they have to do that kind of stuff. But as I got older, when I was in my 30s, before my my last deployment was still in my 20s, but we where did we go? We were out of Hunter Liggett in California, which if you're a reservist, you probably know Hunter Liggett. And there's a bar on post called the Hacienda, and I and a few other people knew about it, and we're just like, hey, we're going to go up to the Hacienda. We're going to be back by 9 p.m. We're just going to go have a drink or two and come back and go to bed like normal human beings would do. And I swear to God, the last day of that annual training, they're like, all right, well, we're going to turn a blind eye and let the soldiers do whatever they want. This is your MWR day. You get the day off. You can go pass off post. There wasn't the closest fucking city. The closest Walmart was an hour drive away, so there wasn't really anything to do. But they let everybody get drunk, and goddamn, man, if it wasn't just the dumbest like soldiers doing like, we can drink, it's time to act just completely stupid. Like one guy pissed in the middle of the bay, like just got up and just started like pulled his dick out and started peeing right in the middle of the open bay, and it's like, man, what? How do you live like this in the real world? How do you survive? Like, I don't understand how you're a reservist. So obviously, 1 weekend a month, you're only under these kind of situations. But how the fuck are you living, man? I don't understand soldiers, dude. I'm glad I'm done with them.
Yeah, me too, man. I mean, the thing that gets me more than anything else is just like, there have been periods of time in the last year where I've gone months without alcohol. Like, I haven't drank since New Year's, and I'm not really planning on drinking for a while just because I don't really feel like it. I mean, I'm not like going sober and, swearing it off forever, but I just don't really feel the need to drink. Smoke weed every now and again, maybe more than every now and again. But you know what I mean? Like, to me, the idea of being like, well, you cannot smoke weed or drink alcohol for 2 weeks, like that doesn't really seem, I mean, I went without alcohol for fucking 13 months. I mean, minus the 15 or how many days of leave I got. I think it was 15 days. You know what I mean? Like, but I went the entire time we were at NTC for like a month without alcohol. The entire time that I was in Thailand, or when I was in the field in Korea without alcohol, I think I went like 4 months without a drink when I was in Korea, and then subsequently in Thailand. So to me, like, it's not really that big of a deal. But then you remember that some people just like, it's not even an alcoholism thing. It's just more like any time that there's a sort of, we've got to be away from our normal routine, like we're just gonna get fucked up. And personally, like, it's one of those situations where I don't see why the military has to be so insane, because I feel like that complete zero tolerance, we will not drink, we will not have fun, they will not do anything. Like, if you have downtime, you better be cleaning your fucking weapon, soldier. That kind of dumb shit. I feel like that not only is that really counterproductive in terms of morale, but it then also puts you in the situation where you've got things like this, where in order to get fucked up, you've got to be like super, super clandestine. And that leaves people doing really dumb things like getting, not washing the antifreeze bottle out, or potentially just drinking from the wrong bottle. And, what gets me about it is, like, if you look at militaries like the French, for example, they have wine in their rations, like, they drink on deployment. They don't feel obligated to fucking cut that shit off completely. And also, one of the things I point out is like, well, the Canadian military, lets people smoke weed. Like, you can't drink or smoke before you go on a field exercise. But I don't really know if they test, rather than like, it's if you get caught smoking or whatever, then like you can get penalized. But I would much rather my soldiers get done with training or whatever and smoke a joint and pass out, and then wake up the next morning and train again, versus them smoking spice or drinking fucking Listerine. Flat out, I would rather that. But I realize that even if America legalized weed federally, like, the military would still find a way to be. The only way that you would get to the point where you could smoke weed in the military is if America legalized it federally, and then there was a lawsuit that went to the fucking Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court decided in favor of the, whomever in the case, to basically, most likely the plaintiff, in order to, force DOD recognition of federal law. I genuinely think that, because every single person who's in leadership in the military was completely 100% brought up in this world of like, nah, drugs are bad. They melt your brain. You will become a werewolf if you smoke weed and a bad soldier. And like, it's everyone. I mean, you think about like, you know, the people who are the really, really senior folks, like the you know, the generation of people who are like at the top, like, you know, the 4 stars and like the Joint Chiefs and stuff, or like the Chiefs of Staff of the Army. Like, these are people who, you know, most likely went to the military academy in like the early to mid 80s now. You're at that point. You know, during the Afghanistan war, like during the surge when McChrystal was the West Point class with like 74. So like these are all people who either the older ones have memories of, you know, pre army reforms, like the 70s army, like the Vietnam Army or the post-Vietnam Army and like the pre-reform stuff. And then the ones who are younger, who are probably in leadership now, you know, were brought up in that sort of like, you better fucking be really good at PT and nothing else. Like how to become a senior officer, run fast. You know, like be an airborne unit, run fast.
Get a Ranger tab.
Exactly. Get a Ranger tab, get tons of skill badges, do 5-finger points at everyone, have a high and tight, go to church a lot. You know, that kind of shit. And so like they were so cracking down on drugs, and like they actually instituted drug testing and stuff like that. So in that regard, like getting those people to get with the program and just acknowledge that A, weed is fine, and B, like it's more of a pain in the ass and more detrimental to the military to chase people around about it than it is to just accept that people are going to smoke weed. And in the grand scheme of things, if you had a big swap out of military drinkers for military weed smokers, I think the military would be a way better run organization that had way fewer insane problems. But good luck getting those dudes, and I say dudes because they're pretty much all guys, to acknowledge that. Like, this is just not going to happen. If it happens in our lifetime, then cool, but I really strongly doubt it.
I mean, maybe they'll get there. Like, we have to get, you know, weed has to be legalized federally first. And the thing is, I don't think the DoD would really have a leg to stand on at that point. But it's the Army, and the Army's going to do exactly what they want to do. But
I don't know, man. I mean, think about don't ask, don't tell. Think about that shit. Like, how long ago? I mean, Lawrence versus Texas was 2003. 2003, they banned that. Basically, Lawrence versus Texas determined by the Supreme Court that sodomy laws were unconstitutional, that any legal proscription of being gay was unconstitutional. And it, like, we were still kicking people out of the military for being gay aggressively. Like, I remember it happening in my unit. You know, like, it wasn't when Obama took over and they kind of relaxed on the enforcement, but not to a great degree. It wasn't until 2010, 2011. I think they put a moratorium on 2010, and it was actually, the policy was changed in 2011. But, you know, you had a period of time where, socially speaking, it was more accepted in America. Obviously, there's not like universal anti-discrimination in America that covers LGBT people. But if you look at, you know, by the 90s, there were at least places in America that recognized gay rights. By 2003, we determined that it was illegal to prosecute people for being gay, for having gay sex. And the military still was kicking people out. So, like, you know, okay, less than 10 years lead time, but for people who served in the military between fucking 2003 and 2011, that's not a whole fucking huge amount of consolation if you were gay and you were persecuted for it. Like I said, I knew good soldiers who got kicked out because someone found out and they got outed to their unit. And then it was like, well, fuck, now we know, we got to kick you out. It didn't matter how good you were at your job. And so to me, like, when it comes to stuff like this, it's so much to do with the culture and the institutional culture. And I think with something like weed in particular, you don't get to be a senior officer in the military, like to be a general or to be a full colonel, certainly not to be like a flag grade officer and, like, you know, in positions like the chief of staff of the Army, as someone who has anything besides a, like, fucking kick them all out approach to drugs, which is really counterproductive in my opinion. But I mean, that's why I got out as a captain, and I'm not fucking doing this shit anymore, you know?
Certainly, I feel like the best thing to do would be to, you know, give us all give them another option. Soldiers are going to get fucked up one way or the other. I just wish they didn't have to like give a ration. Let's go back to rum rations. Like, look, you get two fucking fingers or 3 fingers of rum every night. Everybody can have their rum. If you don't want your rum, you can hand it off to somebody else, or you can just not take it, and that's fine. Like, when I was in Iraq, there were 2 days that they gave us 2 beers, Super Bowl, Army birthday and Super Bowl Sunday. And you could go.
Man, fuck you. Fuck you. I didn't get shit. I didn't get dog shit. Man, fuck you. How the fuck are you getting beer in Iraq? And they wouldn't. Man,
Bro.
if he had even floated that idea to our unit was fucking weird about there being non-alcoholic beer in the DFAC.
It wasn't the unit. It was the whole base. All of Basra had that option. They've set it up in the DFACs and everything, and you could go and you could get. And you did like the thing where you had to mark your finger to say that you got your 2 beers.
It was like voting in Iraq,
like
but for
voting
having
in
a beer.
Afghanistan. Yeah, you go cut your finger off so that you could go get a third beer. So yeah, there's we had that option, and that was nice. There was Bud Lights and whatever, and you didn't get shit faced off of it, but it was nice to like for a minute feel normal like while you're over there. So. It was, if you just have something like that on occasion, you're going to really like remove a lot of these problems. The Army is very binary. It's a yes or a no. Like we're on training, no alcohol, which like I understand because like you're around all of these, heavy machinery and everything. Like in Iraq, Afghanistan, everybody has a loaded gun. So I kind of understand why they don't want you to just get shit-faced. But also, in Afghanistan, the British compound had the 2-can bar because you get 2 cans of beer there. And that was, you could go every night and get a beer or 2, and then you were done. And I'm sure that there would be people who would like really push the limit or maybe try to get more beer or anything like that. But also, for the most part, it just made people feel normal and like, hey, I was able to have a beer at the end of the day. Because come on, Nate, that's what people really want. People get shit-faced, sure, because they're, 21 or 22 and they're dumb as shit, just like you and I were when we were 21 and 22. But if you give people the option to just like have a beer at the end of the day after a hard day's work, where's the harm in that is what I'm asking. And I think that you could really cut down on a lot of the drinking problems in the military if you started treating people like adults. I don't know, maybe.
I think that too, man. I mean, it's just one of those things where that getting to that point where you are willing to let people have something nice or let people have a little bit more responsibility, it goes so much against the way in which everything is sort of baby-proofed for the dumbest possible soldier. But I think the thing for me is that I don't really believe that those deterrents are particularly effective at stopping the people who are determined to do it. And the more extreme the circumstances get, like the more removed you are from civilian life, whether it's long training rotations or, being stationed abroad in a place where you don't have any real freedoms or being deployed to combat, the longer and the more austere the conditions, the more likely it is that people are going to just act out. You tell them they can't have sex, they're going to find a way to be fucking. Like it always happens. You tell them they can't do drugs or that, being in the military, you can't do drugs. People are going to do drugs and they're probably going to do the drugs that they think are going to get out of their system the fastest or that aren't testable or that are legal or that are legal. So, you have like, why not? You can't smoke a joint because they'll find that out. So instead you fucking smoke spice or you do coke or you do MD or you do, what's it called? Amphetamines. You can't drink alcohol. So you drink clandestine alcohol. You drink Pruno, prison wine shit, or stuff that's got, been transported into the field in antifreeze bottles or things along those lines. So like all this behavior is still there. It's just made more clandestine and made more dangerous because of the way in which the military wants to, do this. Like we don't even countenance the idea of brave American patriots drinking a beer while on training exercises. It's like, guys, like, it's not that big of a deal. You don't got to do it every night. You don't have to do it all the time. Maybe you just do it once. Maybe you have a rest day or a refit day at the midway point of a training exercise and you let people drink. I don't know, something. Maybe you drink at the end. Maybe at the end of the exercise before you go home, like you have a barbecue and people drink. But just like stop being such fucking weird Puritans about it. But they're so goddamn Mormon about it. I guess I shouldn't say that. They are so goddamn Boy Scout about it. Like, and of course, the more senior you go in rank, the more likely people are evangelical and they don't drink at all. And they're really into this like binary view. And that, I don't know, that just creates this environment in which it doesn't have any correspondence with normal people and the way they live their lives. And it's like, yes, you could wish for a perfect society in which no one ever does anything. Like all they do is they live like fucking Mark Wahlberg. They wake up at 3 a.m. and pray and then lift for the first of 10 times per day. And then just like, eat breakfast with 0 carbohydrates and just like do 100 pull-ups and then go be awesome soldiers. But that's not real. Like, that's not going to happen. I don't even believe Mark Wahlberg does that shit. So, let's just stop lying to yourself and stop trying to impose this insane binary on things that then creates worse conditions than if you just were like, you know what? Like, this job sucks. We should let people blow off some steam every now and again, and better in a supervised environment where they aren't going to be fucking drinking poison or doing weird sex crimes to each other while fucked up, Like, just be more reasonable.
Just be normal. Just for a minute, just be normal. And hey, that's, it reminds me of, it's very reminiscent of, at the beginning of the pandemic, the whole, like, we're clapping for our essential workers and, I know England had like, we're going to do donuts in the Thames for, for the workers. And here in America,
we won't give NHS workers a raise, but we will absolutely get a boat to whip ass in the middle of the river and honk the horn, in fucking honor of the NHS. Because you know what? Like, the NHS may not, like, you may not give them more money in the bank, money in their pocket, or like food in their fucking fridge, but at least they can rest assured that the nation appreciates them because they made a boat do tricks.
Exactly. And it makes everybody feel a little bit better. But it's the same thing. It's this whole like, the military, how great and wonderful they are, and how we need to support the Army, support the Marines, and do all this great and wonderful stuff for them. But like at the same time, it's like, I don't think you understand just like how the military is treated by the government, and it's not well. It's not bad anymore. They don't beat us. At least I've never been beaten by a superior. I'm sure that there are some places where there's some hitting happening, but
it's called the United States Marine Corps.
But they like it, so it's different. I don't.
Yeah, they are. They're kind of big hogs for punishment, aren't they?
They fucking. Man, it's a cult, dude. It's just such a weird cult, and I've only ever met one Marine who hated being a Marine. And he was the only normal person in the Marine Corps that I've ever met. And he was PAO too. Go figure. He just fucking hated being a Marine so much.
One of the weirdest things I've ever seen in my life, and we're going to move on to another topic, but I will say this much. I saw a joke on Twitter the other day where it was a hockey player who looked like probably pretty youngish, and he had like really long hair, and someone was like, this photo makes him look like one of those paintings of Lucifer where like the Renaissance artist really wanted to fuck him. And I was thinking about, I saw a Marine once at Bagram who had the longest hair I'd ever seen in an enlisted soldier, any soldier, and like sleeve tattoos on both arms, and was in, desert camo, and looked about 19, and basically looked like that same description of just like fucking like evil looking young idiot. And there's a part of me that wonders, like, this kid did not look like a service support guy. He looked like an infantryman. And I was thinking to myself, who in the fuck is like, how does this happen? How does a Marine show up with this long of hair? Like, is he getting like literally kicked out of the military and like sent home from combat? Like, what the fuck is going on? But I remember seeing that and being like, this is just so incongruous. I've never seen hair this long on a regular soldier, like an Army support soldier, much less like a dude that, from what I can tell, because of the optic on his rifle, looked like he was a fucking infantryman. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So you never know. Maybe there are weird pockets of resistance in the Marine Corps where like they reject it so violently that instead it's like, they completely invert your expectations. But I've never met it. I've only encountered, besides that one sort of glancing encounter in the waiting room at the fucking, Bagram Airfield passenger terminal, I've never seen it. I mean, I had a Marine officer assigned to me in Honduras who was a second lieutenant, and he was just kind of an idiot. But like, I don't know if he didn't like being a Marine as much as he just like didn't like being in the military. Which, I mean, I respect that.
Go figure. We have an entire podcast based around that.
Yeah, and you know what? The funny thing is that like, we just spent 40 minutes going on about how the military should change its culture and stop being so stupid about certain things. And I now have a story from the New York Times about how in the aftermath of this, mob attack on the Capitol on January 6th, the one that was literally about to start when we recorded our episode that day, so we missed it entirely. Mm-hmm. there have been members of basically like some of the people the members of this mob were veterans, and one guy in particular who was photographed with a bunch of zip ties and like a fucking ACH helmet, it was a 1989 Air Force Academy grad. So a bunch of Air Force Academy grads wrote an op-ed in the Denver Post saying, like, we reject this. We call on the Air Force Academy to denounce this. Like, we, don't believe in our, we absolutely reject these people from our, former ranks saying they're going to assault the government and arrest, fucking go hang Mike Pence or whatever.
Right.
So in reply to this, the Air Force Academy Alumni Association refused to take sides. I'm going to read the article from the New York Times. 3 weeks after a mob stormed the U.S. Capitol and included a former Air Force officer who was captured on video holding zip ties inside the Senate chamber, the senior leaders of the U.S. Air Force Academy's Alumni Association held a virtual meeting to discuss key priorities, in quotes. But the arrest of Lieutenant Colonel Larry R. Brock Jr. was not among them. When pressed to condemn the January 6 riots, retired Lieutenant General Michael C. Gould, the Association of Graduates CEO, pointedly refused to do so on Thursday. When asked by an attendee whether the majority of the group's board of governors thought the attack on the Capitol was justified, Lieutenant General Gould, who served as the Academy's superintendent from June 2009 until his retirement from active duty in 2013, jokingly said, "That was an easy one." But instead of offering a straight answer, General Gould indicated that board members had, quote, emotions that went across the spectrum and opinions and ideas, unquote. Actually, quote again, "We made it a point that we would stay totally apolitical, which is very important in what we do," the general said, and that we weren't going to pick sides in any of this.
See, what this is I know which side of the bread, I know which side my bread is buttered on. Like,
exactly. It's like a bunch of fucking absolute Jesus freak Air Force officers, because God knows the Air Force Academy is weird. And the older, the more senior people who care about stuff like alumni association stuff tend to be people who stayed in longer anyway. Those people are probably more leaning towards like, hang the godless Muslim Obama kind of shit than they are about like, hey, it's bad when people try to fucking murder our elected representatives.
I mean, look, never mind. I'm not going to go down that route.
No, go down that route. For instance, I want to hear you say some troubling, problematic shit.
I'm just saying that sometimes it's only a coup if it's your enemies. If it's the people that are on your side, then it's liberation. But the Air Force, like I said, the Air Force Alumni Association knows exactly who their members are. So I think that really what this comes down to is that the Air Force, as we know, is not, I mean, they're the craziest ones, right? The most like the Air Force Academy is like the one that's really like bad if you're not a straight white male. They're probably the most evangelical ones, and really it's the Air Force are the ones that are really up their own ass even more than West Pointers. So
100%.
It's not surprising to me that the Alumni Association, because as we talked about earlier, you've got all these old heads that are still like involved in all of these things, like in the Army, so they're not going to really want to do the legalizing of marijuana for troops because they were raised in a world where that is not where that's not acceptable. You're going to have the exact same thing. That's why you have an alumni association full of all these old heads who are just like, more than likely that wasn't the only guy, so he's just the one you caught. So we're just going to go ahead and not say anything because internally we don't want to deal with this. We don't want to have to take any sides. And I have to point out, this is not the military. This is not the government that's saying it. It's an alumni association that is associated with the Air Force Academy. So it's probably one of those like it's a VSO, Veteran Service Organization kind of thing, but it's not. The Air Force is not making the statement. It is just a bunch of old shitheads that are making this statement.
Sure. I mean, it's a retired lieutenant general, but I mean, let's be perfectly honest. There was another retired lieutenant general. His name was Mike Flynn. He was not a sane person, either in uniform or out. So the rank in this case confers it a certain degree of authority if you don't know the particulars. But actually, like, yeah, this is the Alumni Association. This isn't the Air Force Academy itself. But I do think it's indicative of their audience. And I think that it gets to the point here that there are so many people, like I know people, my dad's friends from the Army, one guy in particular, but I know like a bunch of others that are maybe slightly less extreme than this one guy, but they're on the same spectrum, who are like full on, they're like nice people if they think you're like them. But if you go on their Facebooks, they are 100% convinced that Bill and Hillary Clinton, specifically Hillary Clinton, are methodically killing their enemies one by one. And like they're fully into QAnon shit. And so just because these people spent 20, 30 years in the army, like this one guy that I know is a fucking special forces officer, or was at least, like that doesn't mean anything. If you're down that road, you're only going to get worse. And like you said, I think honestly, my experience with basically every veteran service organization is that they skew incredibly old, incredibly male, and incredibly right-wing, which makes sense because the kind of people who are going to be really into the fact that they were in the military as like, a thing to define themselves by and to only associate with other people based on that criteria, it makes sense that's going to be pretty, aggressively pro-military, which tends to be pretty right-wing. We carve out a special exception for podcasters. And this is one of those things where like it doesn't surprise me, but of course I'm disappointed because here you have a bunch of graduates who can see how incredibly stupid this is and say like, no, take a fucking stand, losers. Like this is a thing you need to take a stand on. And instead they're just like, no, we got to be apolitical. Mm-hmm. Some of our graduates think that Joe Biden is harvesting adrenochrome to live forever, and that there are secret pedophile trees scattered across America. And some of our other graduates say that violence is bad.
They got to make a safe space for people who are going to get upset if they're the VSO that they love so dearly ends up being betraying them in this way and saying that maybe you shouldn't try to go storm the Capitol and try to murder politicians. Politician.
It just made me laugh because there was a guy who lost his job for making a joke on Twitter. I think it was like I don't know then how to pronounce the name, so I won't try. But it was some think tank, and the guy basically the joke he was making I think was genuinely funny, but I think he phrased it in a way that was too not obviously joking that it let a bunch of bad faith idiots hop on it and ride it to getting him fired. But his basic point, I think is funny and true, is that if you go by what conservatives are saying, like what they say they want, if you want to achieve unity and compromise and like reconciliation with conservatives, the only way you can go about that is to fucking hang Mike Pence, because apparently that's what they want. That is a funny joke. But the way he phrased it was like it wasn't obviously sarcastic enough, and so it left enough space for dumbasses to take it in incredible bad faith and get him fired. Which I mean, Gamergate is eternal. But the point being here, like that's not a small component of what makes up the American right. Like QAnon birther, John Birch shit, like hang them all, nuke Iran, make the Middle East a fucking parking lot, like all that stuff, like. That same kind of murderous crazy bullshit, like do you think those people think any differently about their domestic enemies or who they perceive their enemies to be? Like, don't fool yourself. And so I feel like I'm not surprised this happened, but I also think that it's kind of indicative of who these people are and what that tendency is like.
So this week for our bonus, I talked to Matt Steeb, who wrote an article about all the art, the bootleg Bart T-shirts and stuff that kind of really cropped up around the first Gulf War, and just how weird it was that that I don't know, just the weird container that is the first Gulf War and this explosion of bootleg T-shirts that were just kind of found everywhere and then disappeared. So here's that. I mean, I remember 91 vaguely. I was 8 years old. I don't remember these T-shirts, but also probably nobody was sending their kid to school in them, so I wouldn't have necessarily seen them. But also this, Desert Storm also seems to be the first like war that was Vietnam was on TV, but Desert Storm was the first time that you really got to see like the military leaned into the public affairs side of it and was just like, yes, let's give you all the things about how great we're doing, but also let's not talk about all the war crimes we're doing.
Yeah, Desert Storm is a super weird combination because it was, it kind of made CNN in a way of a 24-hour news network. They put a ton of resources into covering it, and you could see even guys like the commanding general Schwarzkopf and Bush talking about what they were seeing on CNN as it related to to the war. So there was a ton of coverage, but at the same time, they would pool journalists and kind of put them in the middle of nowhere, and also require their reports, or many of them, to go through military censors. So it was at the same time pretty visible, but kind of
but sanitized.
That didn't mean anything, and we're just showing bombings, not what was bombed or how things actually developed on the ground, which was intentional. It's part of the Vietnam syndrome, is part of the reason that or the reason that Americans lost interest in the Vietnam War, in addition to the casualty count, was seeing it on TV and seeing all these atrocities and seeing a war through the press in a way that was real for the first time, really. And they didn't want that for Desert Storm, and so they successfully were able to make it a thing on TV rather than something that you could really fully experience.
Yeah, it makes it a lot easier to sell the war when you're only showing them the good bits. Like you link to the story of the photos from the Highway of Death and how those managed to get around censorship, but then were censored back here because everybody's just like, that's horrifying. Nobody wants to see it. And yeah, that's why you got to fucking look at it,
Yeah, there's a very famous picture. I don't remember the photographer off the top of my head, but of a guy who was melted, and it is pretty powerful. And the U.S. did try to censor it, and it did get around the world. But there was, even talking about the image of the Iraq War, there really wasn't anything that lived on beyond that one image, the Highway of Death. Probably more than anything else, the Kuwaiti oil fields on fire.
Yeah.
But if you think of what are the popular images of Vietnam, what are the popular images of the Iraq War, the second one, there's really very few for Desert Storm, which is interesting to me in terms of how we remember it and how it's been kind of pushed to the side.
Yeah, but also, we're getting more into a era of disposable media, I suppose. So in Vietnam, if you're a photographer or you're a videographer, there's a lot that goes in. There's a lot that goes into shooting film, especially back then. Like now, anybody can be a photographer with a decent digital camera. You just need to know how to frame a shot and maybe how to do lighting and things. But back then it was there's a lot more involved in it. And 1991, you probably had a lot more access to cameras and being able to put out other information. Same thing with Iraq. Like if you want to look at pictures of Iraq, you can look at pictures of soldiers in Iraq for days, weeks. Like it's all, every soldier over there has taken 100 photos of themselves, in per month, Facebook profiles and Instagram photos and everything. Like, and even back when I was in 2004 in Afghanistan, we're still doing the same thing. We didn't have as quick access as the phones, but it was not hard to get a hold of a digital camera and upload things to the internet. So it does, when somebody mentions the Gulf War to me, the Gulf War I, the Highway of Death pictures are always what immediately comes to my mind. Now, I'm anti-war socialist, so of course I'm going to immediately go for the violence. But there's really nothing else. I mean, I can think of pictures of Vietnam, like the young, like the 18-year-old Marine who looked like he was like maybe 15. I can think of the last flight from Saigon. There's all kinds of World War II stuff, but yeah, I don't know. It's it seems to. I don't know if we just don't want to think about it.
Yeah, I mean, to the credit of or whatever to Vietnam, it was significantly longer. Orders of magnitude longer, and same with the second Iraq. But yeah, I do think it has been pushed aside, in if not intentionally, then there's no intentional effort to remember it. That it's better to forget it so you can do it again, which
doesn't make sense because we won, right? Like, right? Like, we won? ? Like, we did our goals. I mean, notwithstanding of all the shady shit and all the terrible shit that otherwise happened, it was a mission complete. Mission goals were complete. Iraq was driven out of Kuwait. So you can't say that. And it was decisive and it was quick. Like, it wasn't the long sprawling thing. I'm trying to remember 2003, and while I was in the Army, I was fairly ambivalent of world news, which as a soldier is probably one of the dumbest things. But back then, it wasn't that big of a thing.
Yeah, I mean, now that I'm thinking of talking about forgetting and remembering this war, there were parts of it that were remembered. I think whether there was direct lawmakers talking about the first Iraq and the second one, I don't think you can have the second one without the model of quote unquote success for the first one, where you get in and out really fast. And while there were disastrous effects for Iraqis, there were not lingering effects for America outside of the troops some troops were exposed to chemical weapons and developed a symptom called the Gulf War syndrome. But you can't really do the second one without the first. And I think that remembrance was there implicitly, if not explicitly.
So was there any other kind of art from the Gulf War that you came across? Was it just mostly T-shirts?
People have, since it came out, sort of talked about some of their things that they've run across, and a lot of the same sort of jingoistic or xenophobic ideas come across. I think on playing cards, there is a excellent, last year was at MoMA PS1 in Queens, a art show about the art of both Iraq wars that was tremendous, and there's a book for it, and all the art is online. But T-shirts, it seems like, was mostly the primary mover of this stuff, which makes sense. If you're trying to sell something in America quickly, you're going to put it on a T-shirt most often.
Yeah, the art, which most people do now. The beginning of any online store is usually putting designs up on Teespring or Redbubble or something, and the art in Iraq now is a lot more permanent because we are more permanent there, and there was a lot of very ornate paintings, very like military paintings, like army soldiers were painting them, so they were big, we're the the Red Bulls when the 34th Infantry Division was when I was in Iraq. So the Red Bulls, so there's like their symbol is like a red bull skull with the horns and everything. So they got those painted up all over the place, and they've got, at one point, I think 2009 was called the year of the NCO. So there was like all these backbone of the U.S. Army art just splashed all over the place. And like it had to be approved, but also it was perfectly, like, it was everywhere. And people didn't cover up old stuff, at least unless it was like really badly done and they're like, we can do something better here. Now, that's not to say that the art in the bathrooms wasn't the true feelings of the military, which is mostly just drawings of dicks and telling people that they suck. But that's how the military talks to itself. I don't think the civilian side would be doing anything like that.
No, I'm not sure. That T-shirt could sell probably. There was one person responded and said they had a Pog Slammer that featured Saddam Hussein on one side and the word "so damn insane" on the other. I had forgotten about Pogs, but yeah, it sounds like this stuff was making its rotation in some ways.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much. As always, you can follow me at Army Strang. Follow Nate at In These Deserts. You can follow the podcast at Hell of a Way. You can follow us on YouTube as well. I do YouTube videos usually once a week. So if you're listening to this not on YouTube, you probably don't know that. So that's out there. We got all kinds of different ways to put content into your ears. And as always, reach out to us. Let us know if there's anything that you might want to listen to. If you think you might be a good candidate. At this point, a lot of the people that I interview come to me and they DM me and they say, hey, I think I might be a good fit for a bonus episode. So, feel free to reach out at any time. And as for that, thank you for your support. And Nate, we'll talk to you next week.
Yep. Have a good one.
Zoom, zoom.